What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Pound for Pound podcast. I am Michaela Vernava alongside Andre Cacciatorian and our friend Matt Perino from UFC.com. We're at TV Garden, UFC 220 going down this weekend. And yes, we did finally find a name for our podcast. Pretty exciting. Let's get a reggaeton horn. Yeah, very exciting stuff.
So, yeah. Matt's rolling his eyes.
That was impressive.
What do you think of the name?
I like it.
Yeah?
I like
Good.
it. On pound for pound rankings, Andre is on the lower end, but
okay.
I do like the name.
Yeah.
I feel like that's good.
Well, it was my idea.
That's good job, Michaela. That was really good. The second you
Not to
texted me that
overshadow you,
idea, I
but-
was like, wow. It took us a year to find the name.
Yeah.
to get out of the Nesson.com UFC podcast. It's good to have the actual name now.
Yep. So now we have it, and that means that this conversation is going to be more scintillating than ever. We're going to have some great discussions on here. And it's really exciting that we're rolling out this new name when they are rolling out the Octagon behind us. They're setting it up here at TV Garden. Very cool that UFC is here in Boston. We did just have the ceremonial weigh-ins, and Dana White came out with a Patriots t-shirt on. That was pretty cool. The crowd here was super pumped up about that. He said that for anyone that traveled, he's sorry, but the Patriots are going to win a Super Bowl. And he said anyone that doesn't like that, they're just going to have to deal with it.
That's a discussion you, Doug Kite, and Zach Cox should have on Between the Tackles. We're here to talk fighting.
All right, fair enough. Well, yep, football fans, you can tune into Between the Tackles. But now, I guess let's actually wait before we get into previewing these fights. We do have something else we need to talk about, and that is the fact that Dana White kind of wavering, a little waffling, wishy-washy about what the deal is with Conor McGregor and his belt, and whether or not this is going to be an undisputed fight between Khabib and Tony Ferguson.
Yeah, so he said that, he came out and said it is an undisputed lightweight title fight between Ferguson and Nurmagomedov. But correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. This is kind of an unprecedented situation where you have two guys fighting for an undisputed belt when there's already a sitting champion in Conor McGregor. It's a weird situation. I didn't understand. He would not strip the belt away from McGregor.
That's what I don't
they kept pressing
the two
him.
things conflict. He wouldn't strip McGregor of the belt, but he's saying it's going to be an undisputed title fight. I don't. How can you have both of those things happening at the same time?
The mind of Dana White is always working, okay? All I'll say on this is Conor McGregor is a once in maybe ever type of athlete. Like Dana said at the press conference, this guy is bigger than the sport, bigger than sports itself. I mean, he is the first MMA fighter to really cross over, other than Ronda Rousey, in a little bit of a different way, but to that mainstream star power, and he just calls the shots. I mean, he wants to go away for a year and a half and go into a completely different sport and do a boxing match with Floyd Mayweather. You don't say no to him. And so I think that the idea here maybe is that we're just going to kind of see what happens. That's the plan, but things change when it comes to Conor McGregor.
It's just difficult for me to look at the situation, though, because he would have treated any other fighter differently, any other champion differently. He would have stripped the belt away, and he just couldn't say, yes, I'm stripping the belt away from Conor McGregor, when essentially this is a title fight for an undisputed championship in Nurmagomedov and Ferguson. It was very strange. It was very weird. And
Did you hear what he said when he introduced Khabib? It's Khabib time. He's on the Khabib hype train. He's feeling it.
Everyone here was on the Khabib hype train too. They were really revved
that's
up
great.
for him.
Yeah,
they went to the
A lot of
Boston Celtics game together last night. I mean, I feel like you're implying that Dana's a Conor guy. Well, I think he's a Khabib guy too.
Oh,
and I think he likes Tony Ferguson as well.
I'm not saying he's a this guy, he's a that guy. I'm just saying be consistent. It's like just strip the belt.
There is no
consistency. It's a vacancy in the lightweight division right now.
There is no consistency when it comes to one Conor McGregor. He breaks the mold. He's a little bit different.
I think this though. Remember how I felt really bad for all the fighters in the lightweight division, and like these guys, Conor McGregor's holding the division hostage. I'm glad to see that's finally ending.
Sending out some sympathy cards.
It's finally ending.
Exactly. We got the fight.
We got the fight.
We got the fight. It's going to be Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. This is a can't-miss fight, and I feel like a lot of times in this game we're moving so fast from fight to fight. There's no off-season in the UFC that we don't get a time to revel in a rivalry. This one has been made now 3 separate times. This is the 4th time we've had this long build-up to this fight, making it almost this like super mega fight that people have been waiting for. 2 of like pound-for-pound fighters. These guys are both top 15 pound-for-pound fighters. It's going to be a great fight. Let's enjoy that.
That's going to be great. Yeah, I agree.
And the Boston crowd here making it clear that they are as we said, Team Khabib, so that was obvious. But also jumping from fight to fight is Francis Ngannou. Just fought in December, had the knockout of the year for 2017. He is impressive. Matt, you've said before that his arm is the size of your entire torso. I think one of the most interesting things, his punch, equivalent to has a power of 96 horsepower. How do I say that? I don't know. I'm not a big horsepower aficionado, but I do know that that's equivalent to a Ford Escort driving at top speed. So that is insane. I would not want to be punched
what
by
type
that
of Ford?
man. A Ford Escort.
How big is a Ford Escort? I'm not a car guy. You know what a Ford is?
Yeah, I'm not a
Ford
Mona Lisa
Escort.
Vito of cars
Is
either,
that like
but
one
I know
of
it's
those
a
little
car,
SUVs?
and
It's
it
a car.
drives fast.
Yeah, it's a
so
car.
True, yeah. If you get it, yeah. Okay, yeah.
yeah.
He'll be, yeah.
I am super, super excited for this fight. I think everybody is. Obviously, Stipe Miocic gunning for his third title defense, which would make UFC history. I love that Dana White called this the sickest heavyweight championship fight in UFC history. It obviously is going to be great. I am wondering what we're going to see from Miocic. There's been some debate over the pronunciation of his name.
A lot
as
of good
late.
pronunciations
You say
on
you
this
still
card.
you
Yeah.
still call
I
him
still kind of call him
Miocic,
Miocic, but it's actually, if you listen to the great John Anik, it's Miocic.
Miocic, yes.
So.
But anyway, I feel like he's going to come into this feeling sort of underestimated. He is the underdog, even though he's the champ. Francis Ngannou's obviously on a roll, but I do feel like people are underestimating Miocic, and I think that this is going to be a tall task for Ngannou, and given the little amount of experience that he has, definitely I think his hardest test yet. What do you think, Matt?
I definitely think it's his hardest test to date because he has to change up his style a little bit. You know, we talked about it a little bit in front of Fenway the other day. Miocic is a guy that comes forward. He's aggressive. He gets in your face. He likes to make a fight dirty because he knows that if he ever gets in trouble, he can rely on his very, very strong boxing background. He was a Golden Gloves a boxer, a guy that really excels with his hands. So he knows if he gets in trouble with, say, an Alistair Overeem, a kickboxer, you know, a Mark Hunt, a kickboxer, that he can always go back to his hands and they're going to be there for him. His technique is really good. But with a guy like Ngannou, who wanted to be a boxer before he ever started even thinking about MMA, he walked into a gym in France and he said, I want to be the next Mike Tyson. And his coach at the time said, hey, Francis, come over here. Let me show you this little thing we got. It's called MMA. It's a little wrestling, a little jiu-jitsu, but you still get to hit people and kick people. And he was like, all right, sign me up. But he wanted to be a boxer. He also has some great technique. That uppercut that he landed against Alistair Overeem was from a very unorthodox position. I mean, he's leaning a little bit off balance, and it was like a cartoon. We talked about it. It's just is craziness. So toughest matchup to date, but you know, I think that the hype is deserved.
I don't think it's going to be as simple as one punch is the thing, and the way he was able to finish Overeem. I think he will be tested beyond first round one punch. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Michaela. I think a lot of people are underestimating Miocic coming into this fight. They're all falling in. People are a very interesting specimen. They always fall into this the recency bias. Something recent happens, everyone falls in love with it. The most recent thing we remember in the UFC, the biggest event, was Ngannou's knockout punch. That's all ingrained in our heads. People are forgetting that. Miocic has a 76% knockout rate when he wins. 76%, that's 12% higher than Ngannou. The guy knocks out people at a higher rate than Ngannou. I get Ngannou has the most powerful punch in the world amongst all humans. Is that true? Is that something like that? Ford Escape or whatever. But Miocic, you can't underestimate this guy. In his last 5 fights, 5 straight knockouts, he's a different fighter than what he was when he lost to Junior Dos Santos that first time. He's a different guy. He's a much more polished fighter, much a better technique, I think, than Ngannou. And the more I look at this fight, I was talking to you, Matt, yesterday. I said, you know, it kind of feels weird. Ngannou looks much bigger than Miocic. I think Stipe is going to be in trouble. But the more I look at it, the more I look at the numbers, the more I look at the history, I'm going to go with Miocic in this one.
Okay, here's what I see. Ngannou has the reach advantage, he has leg reach advantage, he has a weight advantage, but he wrapped up his training camp a couple weeks ago, went off to Paris, cue chain smokers, we were staying in Paris. I hope that that is the song he walks out to. Probably won't be, but whatever he was doing out in old Paris, I don't know. I think that's where Miocic was probably stewing, and I love his composure. He comes out to the press conference, says, I'm just a Midwest guy. He does have that very chill composure. And he also has been fed plenty of bulletin board material. Now, Andre is going to laugh at me because I do tend to make cross-sport references, but you look at what happened in the NFL last weekend, and you see a couple of underdogs coming out in the Philadelphia Eagles and especially the Jacksonville Jaguars. Le'Veon Bell fed the Jacksonville Jaguars plenty of bulletin board material, and athletes really can feed off that. And I think that that's something that Miocic is seeing everyone who's hyping up this new guy who rolls in to the octagon, and I feel like he's not showing it, but I think that that's going to play a role, and he's such a smart fighter that, yeah, I don't know. I have a gut feeling, and I think Miocic is going to win this one.
Well, I mean, the fact that he's an underdog is just, it's blasphemy. I think that's, again,
baddest man in the world.
Yeah, it's recency bias. People fall in love with what they just recently saw. You know, let's say you're a guy at the bar, you see a beautiful woman, you say, oh, that's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. It's like, is it though? Like, it's just falling into recency bias.
So we can ask you that, because literally anytime you go anywhere, you see the most beautiful woman you've ever seen.
And that's wrong. It's wrong. It's all recency bias.
So there's levels to this. Like the light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier says, there's levels to how confident I feel in a fight. You talking about Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. Going into that fight, I knew Conor McGregor was going to defeat Jose Aldo. I studied the tape. I watched both of them fight. I just thought it was a horrible matchup. I was 100% confident in that fight. This one, I'm like 35% confident that Francis is going to probably win this fight. Probably. There's a lot of ways for Stipe Miocic to win this fight.
I'm not really good at math, but that would be 65% confident that Miocic is going to win this fight.
I mean, like, I'm 30% of my 100% available confidence that he is going to win this fight. It's confusing. I'm not that confident.
I'm like thinking about this. I'm like, so basically you're saying Miocic
you're right.
is going to
Listen,
win.
I'm a writer. I do not do
Perino
math.
does not make
I'm
sense.
really proud of myself for coming up with that 65
really good.
real quick.
That's really good. But there's a lot of ways. I was talking to Chris Weidman yesterday at at Media Day, and he said, here's the thing. I train with Stipe Miocic. People underestimate him his whole career. The thing about that people don't talk enough about is that he has more ways to win this fight. I agree with him. I do think that Stipe could wrestle, he could stand, but the thing is, Francis has the most dangerous weapon in this fight. That one-punch knockout power, that's no joke. You don't see things like what he just did to Alistair Overeem done. And here's another thing we're not talking about. Stipe Miocic gets knocked down, gets rocked a lot in his fights. He got hit with a straight right hand, I think it was, from Alistair Overeem, hit the deck. That straight right hand coming from Francis Ngannou, you don't just like get stunned for a second and then recover. You are in survival mode. And when guys are in survival mode against Francis, he finishes them.
But we have seen, though, up-and-coming fighters who go on a roll and start getting all of this hype, the lights on them, all of this attention, and then when it comes to the biggest stage, they do fall flat on their face. Not always, but we've seen it in the past. And the thing about Ngannou going off to Paris, and he said that he has been preparing for Miocic since before Overeem, before a lot of his previous fights, that he has had his, and he's come out and said it, that he's had his, he says this belt is his. He's very confident, and I think maybe overly confident when you look at another NFL reference, the New England Patriots, and their no days off, one game at a time mantra. But seriously, they have set the precedent for winning in sports in general. When you look at that dynasty that they've created, I mean, you can't argue with it. The way they approach, if they were in the octagon, it would be one fight at a time, not overlooking. And I mean, I know that now he's here, he's knocking at the door of having the chance at the belt, but I think he's a little too confident.
It's a 5-round fight, right? It's a 5-round fight. We know that. It's a 5-round fight, and you know, I agree. Overly confident. Have we seen Ngannou in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round? I don't think so. You were talking about this yesterday. I think the longer the fight goes, the advantage goes to Miocic. He's a more technical fighter, and I think Miocic knows this, and he's going to approach this fight with that mentality. Can you see him tiring him out in the first couple of rounds?
Yes, I can. And I think that's a very legitimate chance Miocic has. And I also think that, like, listen, who knows? Francis has been taken down in fights. I think it was against one of Anthony Hamilton. I think he suffered a takedown in the fight. But what did he do? He literally just grabbed a hold of his arm, cranked it back because of his just insane power and just strength, and literally ripped a heavyweight man off of him into a submission finish. He's just like a freak of nature, and I think that's what's more about the hype than anything else, is that, you know, you talk about up-and-coming fighters that get hype around them. We haven't seen anything like this before in any division. A guy that comes in who's only been training MMA for 4 years and is an absolute killer in there. It's unbelievable to watch. I think there's more ways for Stipe to win, but the most dangerous weapon in this fight, do not forget, is that power from
That is
Francis.
tough to argue. He is an incredible specimen of an athlete. But also fighting the light heavyweight title fight, DC versus Vulcan Oezdemir. And Daniel Cormier did say that he usually, if he is not the main event of the evening, just kind of fights, does his thing. He said he will be coming back out and sitting next to Dana White to watch Miocic and Ngannou, which I think was interesting. But as far as this fight, what do you guys think is going to go on?
I don't know if you guys remember an Old Spice commercial from back in 2007. It was his name was Bruce Jennings, I believe. He's dressed up in this pirate outfit and he's walking around this room and he's saying, "Experience is everything." You know, I think that's going to be the difference in this fight. Daniel Cormier.
That took me a long time to arrive at where I was lost.
I don't think his name was Bruce Jennings either, but. It's a very good commercial. You should go on YouTube, check it out. Old Spice, 2007 commercial. He's saying, if you have it.
You know, I prefer the Axe commercials where like ferrets are coming out of the guy's hair and the
No,
treadmill.
no. This was a classy commercial, and then at the end of the commercial, he says,
You sure it's not Von Miller with his?
No. It was before Von Miller, before Terry
saying
Crews.
that he's sensitive.
Yeah, it was a commercial where he came out and said, if you've never had any of it ever, people just seem to know. In terms of experience. Experience is everything. And I think that's going to be the difference here between Cormier and
I think we're
Oezdemir.
sidetracked here, but
No.
I think what you're trying to say is what DC himself said back at the press conferences a couple weeks ago, that there are levels to this game, and Oezdemir is a guy who has just risen so quickly. I loved that Cormier said that if... I'm very tongue-tied. At one point in his career, he thought to himself, if I'm fighting a guy like Oezdemir, that I've done something horribly wrong with my time and my money, meaning though that he just didn't think that Oezdemir could rise through the ranks as quickly as he has. Matt, do you think that that will be in any way a disadvantage for him, the fact that he is relatively inexperienced?
Yeah, I think, you know, first of all, there's a bunch of disadvantages that he has going into this fight. I mean, you look at his teammate, a guy that, you know, Daniel, you know, he's an analyst. He breaks down the game very, very well. And he even said it, I took out the varsity guy on your team. You're the JV guy from your team. And I took out Anthony Johnson, who has a wrestling background himself. And, you know, just crazy. His last fight, Anthony, love Anthony Johnson, but craziness going in there trying to, you know, wrestle with Daniel Cormier. So the one advantage that Oezdemir does have is that he's not going to be tricked into doing something that he's not good at. He's going to go in there, he's going to push forward, and he's going to try to tag Daniel. And, you know, if he can, he can. I mean, listen, Daniel's tough. He's a great champion. He's, you know, if he gets into the wrestling game, he's going to grind on you. He's going to make you tired. But Oezdemir has shown that he has that punching power. The problem is Daniel, even Oezdemir's coach, I keep going back and forth between Ouz and Oezdemir.
Yeah.
Which one do you
it's
like
a
better?
tough one.
I mean, it's a Turkish name, and it's an Oezdemir.
Oezdemir, yeah. I'll stick with that. I'll try to keep saying Oezdemir. He's oozing with potential. And, you know,
I hate the word ooze.
Maybe I'm
though,
wrong.
I'm not gonna lie.
that's true. That's
it's like
gross.
one of my least favorite
But,
words.
oh, by the
in
way,
English
Bruce
language.
Campbell was the guy in the Old Spice commercial, not Bruce Jennings. I'm sorry.
Oh, all right.
When you
well,
said
those are the
Jennings,
important
I was
facts we need to
thinking
make sure we
of-
clarify. Bruce Jenner.
Bruce
I was
Jenner.
thinking of Bruce Jenner, and I was also thinking of
Formerly Bruce Jenner, now forward.
the wide receiver for the Vikings and the Packers back in the day.
Greg Jennings.
Greg
Hey
Jennings.
guys, let's check it out. They just unveiled the octagon.
That
It
is
appears
the
to be
battlegrounds
finished.
will be ready for tomorrow in Boston.
I can't whistle. Looks good. That is the most beautiful octagon I have
Back
ever
to the
seen.
topic. I think
Is
the
that
only
recency bias?
yeah, that's very recency bias. I think the
Good-looking
best chance
octagons.
Oezdemir has is go out there and you talk about his punching power. Try to finish this fight early, first, second round, go for that knockout punch, and I think that might cost him because of Cormier's experience. he might catch him as he's trying to catch him.
I think this fight will go the distance.
Wow.
I say DC by decision.
Okay, I could see that actually.
See, the way that
Let's see
that's
that.
interesting because the way that Oezdemir has to fight, you'd be surprised if he could last 25 minutes with Daniel because, you know, he's going to have to be throwing big shots and he's going to expend that gas tank really, really quickly. He's very conditioned. I've heard from people in his camp, he's one of the hardest workers that a lot of guys have ever seen. I mean, if you're around fighters, you're used to guys that just bust their ass in the gym, and this guy stands out. Henry Hoof, though, Vulcan's coach, said something very interesting. He said, people underestimate Daniel Cormier's striking because he's such a great wrestler. I fought him twice now because he coaches Anthony Johnson, and he said he's no slouch on the feet. So we have to prepare for him in all areas of this game, and that's what makes Daniel so good. Here's the thing, though. If Daniel Cormier, love Daniel Cormier, he's one of my favorite people in the entire UFC world. If he loses this fight, where does he go from here? Is there pressure on Daniel Cormier to win this fight? Because you have the whole John Jones saga, you move past it, you're now ready to kind of, you know, recharge, restart, and then you face a guy like Volkan Oezdemir, who you've been kind of downplaying this whole lead up. What happens if you lose this fight? Where do you go from here?
I think it'll be a rematch.
He's said that he is going to feel uncomfortable until his hand is raised, and that he just has this bad taste in his mouth about the way the John Jones fight went down. So,
With that said,
He
I'm
also
going
seems-
DC
yeah.
by second round
He
finish.
just seems so relaxed too. Like, I've covered a couple DC fights, but he just like so chill.
Yeah.
I've never seen him this relaxed before. I mean, you've covered more fights than I have. Have you seen him this relaxed
No.
before? Yeah,
I think the Jones thing, I mean, to have that sit in you for years like that, to know that he's the only guy to ever beat you, and to just be waiting and just begging and praying and hoping for that rematch, and then to get it and then to lose it. I think he's experienced all the highs and lows. I think he wants to enjoy the last stretch of his career here. He's relaxed. He's enjoying it, and that could be bad news for Volkan Oezdemir.
you're usually the guy that's sending out the sympathy cards. You always have this bleeding heart for all these athletes out
he
there.
works
But
so hard.
I can say that DC is one athlete that I do really feel bad for, that he has had to deal with all the crap that goes along with John Jones. And he is just such a classy, cool athlete, and obviously great at what he does. It's just
And a great
too bad
dad.
that he
I mean,
gets-
wow. I mean,
yeah.
talk about a guy. That's no act. Some people, like, you know, can fake it maybe. I don't know. That guy lives for his kids. And as a father myself, I appreciate that.
Yeah, and soon to be
Father of
second
two. Yes.
father-
Yes. About to have a daughter, which, honey, if you're watching this, you are never leaving the house. So be ready for that. Well,
Baby girl Perino on the line.
Yes.
So that is exciting stuff. Guys, let's do some rapid fire picks. Why am I so tongue-tied? I better not be tongue-tied on Saturday.
because
Sorry
you keep
about
watching
that.
his Snapchat, and he's like, meh, meh, meh. Yeah, there you go.
I have perfected the reggaeton horn.
That's
I
very
can
good.
say that.
Yeah, it's good. It's a
I'm
good one.
being around this guy way too often during the workday, but that's all right. So anyway, yes, let's make some rapid fire picks. Calvin Cator versus Shane Burgos, the undefeated Shane Burgos. What do you guys think about this?
I think Calvin Cator is one of the most underrated fighters on this card.
The
I-
Boston finisher.
Boston finisher. I'm not only saying that because I work for Nesson in Boston. I like this guy. The guy's been in charge of his own fighting promotion called Combat Zone for the last few years now, so he understands the it's a weird situation. He owns his own promotion, and he's also fighting in the UFC. Interesting dynamic. I think that might be kind of advantageous for him. I don't know why, but it just seems like it should be, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
And guys, what, 17-2? People don't know about him. He made his UFC debut at 214 against Andre Fili. Looked pretty good in that. And I like the home octagon advantage here in Boston. I'm going to take, it's a nice Boston-New York rivalry. Burgos is from New York, and Cator is from Boston. I don't know if the UFC did that on purpose. They have a little Red Sox, Yankees.
Not at all, because I talked to Shane the other day at Media Day, and he actually doesn't watch any other sports and he doesn't really understand the whole New York-Boston rivalry dynamic. So, which is interesting.
Maybe he'll
'cause that was the
So
storyline I
I
was
think that is
chasing.
going to be to his disadvantage because the Boston hometown crowd gets pretty fired up about their sport. So I am going to go with Cator, the Boston, the hometown guy.
I hate to burst your bubble,
He's
but
the underdog.
Shane Burgos is one of my 5 unranked fighters in the UFC. I don't have 4 more for you, but if I were to put together a list, he would make my 5 of a guy who I think can be a future champion. He's well-rounded, he has a grappling background, and he's been finishing people at an alarming rate. His striking, what people don't know about Shane is you get in there with him, you see him, nothing really is impressive, but his speed, his quickness, and his striking is very, very tough to deal with. Calvin said at open workouts that Shane's not going to be ready for me because I'm well-rounded everywhere. Well, so is Shane. So I think this is going to be a very good fight. Two really talented fighters, but I like Burgos. I like what he brings to the table, not only in terms of fighting, but his attitude and his confidence.
The question is Burgos to Matt Perino as Curtis Blaydes is to Andre Khachatorian?
I love Curtis Blaydes.
There is no one that is Curtis Blaydes. Look, to me, like Curtis Blaydes is to this man right here. As a matter of fact, we should get you. You know what? Christmas just happened, but I think we should pitch together, put a little money in, maybe call some people in Nesson, get you a flight to Australia, front row, so you can watch Curtis versus Mark Hunt. What do you think about that?
He would just have reggaeton horns
That'd be
coming
great.
out of his ears.
I'm just excited for the guy. He's going to be in Perth. It's going to be fantastic.
It's a huge opportunity.
But let me just make one point before we move on to the next fight. This is a big fight for both these guys. You know,
Matt just pitched a trip to Australia for you.
I said, yeah, I'm down. Burgos and Cator, whoever wins this fight, is probably ranked. Would you agree? And they're putting themselves in finally in the top 15. It's a very important fight. I'm excited to see it.
All right. Well, also we have John Volante versus Francimar Barros. I am going with Volante in this one because of his kickboxing skills and also the fact that he's now improved his wrestling skills from training with Chris Weidman. I think that is going to serve him very well. What do you guys think?
I got to agree with you. I'm going to go with Volante as well. Both these guys coming off a loss in their last fight. But although I'm going with Volante, love Francimar Barros' name. It's a fantastic name. It's just, you think of like a Matador or something. It's a fantastic name.
Yeah. Both these guys are kind of bruisers, right? You know, they both have power in their hands. Francimar, I've been watching a few of his fights. He likes to make things really, really dirty and sloppy, right? Which, you know, can go a couple different ways. That sounded bad. But what I'm saying is he likes to, you know, get in your face because where he is best is on the ground on top.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not getting any better here.
Dirty and sloppy.
We're not getting any better here. But from top position, utilizing some ground and pound, he is phenomenal. And, you know, that's where Volante doesn't want to be in this fight. Volante wants to keep it standing. He wants to strike. But in his last fight against Shogun, he struggled a little bit.
This thing just went off the rails.
I know, it went off the rails. Can you do a little good editing job on that? Or, you know, wow.
Maybe, I don't know.
All right, like that's...
Let's get to the last fight before...
vocabulary. I'm still going with John Volante, though. Love John.
All right, we'll get to the last fight before this completely just implodes upon us. Thomas Almeida versus Rob Font. I once again am going to go with the underdog hometown guy. Love Rob Font.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Font.
Rob Font, last two losses were in Brazil. He came out on media day and said he compared himself to Tom Brady. Speaking of cross-sport references, he said Tom Brady struggles.
A bold statement,
he said Tom Brady struggles in Miami the same way I struggle in Brazil. So now he's home and in front of his home crowd. Tough matchup against Almeida, though. Almeida's a good striker. Font is also a striker. Font better be careful he doesn't end up on the mat in this one because he struggled on the ground in the past. But, you know, he outstrikes his opponents. It's going to be a good fight, I think. Two guys who just get after it and just punch each other. I think they'll be on their feet most of the time.
Right.
I'm going to be biased. And I think Almeida will win, but I want Font to win. I'm not going to shy away from that.
Perfect matchmaking by Shelby and Mick Maynard to put this fight at the beginning of the main card because it's going to be a can't miss, stand in the middle of the octagon firefight. Yeah. And these two guys are going to throw bombs. I really like Rob Font, but I feel like Almeida has kind of rose quickly, suffered the setback, and now is centered his focus. Now, with that said, he gets hit a lot. Like, for as great as he is with his striking, he gets hit a lot, and against a guy like Rob Font, who has some power at this weight class, you don't want to get hit, so we'll see how he manages that. But he's looked really good since his loss to Cody Garbrandt, and let's be honest, not many people have beat Cody Garbrandt. Only one, and that's the champ.
I think this has potential to be a fight of the year candidate. I'm going to be that honest with you. It's just
It's a great fight.
Bloodbath. I like it.
Did you say fight of the year?
Yeah. I think this will be a fight. Like, it'll just be exciting 5 rounds of mauling each other. Small guys, it was hard to get a knockout. It was just going to go to the distance, and I think there'll be a lot of blood. Not 5 rounds, sorry, 3 rounds. There'll be a lot of blood on that mat.
All right. Well, it is going to be an exciting night. That is for sure. We are going to have wall-to-wall coverage. We're going to have a ton of fun. So.
There's a couple big fights coming up over the course. Wow, did that make it all the way down there? No, I'm just kidding. Max
think it
Holloway
lands in the
versus
octagon.
Max Holloway versus Frankie Edgar, guys, coming up in Las Vegas. You guys making a trip out?
Nah.
Yeah.
Come on
I'd
out.
like to,
Yeah.
but
Come on down.
At
Wow,
Fred
wow,
Nutter.
wow.
We
I
gotta go
won't be
cover
there.
that.
No?
That is gonna be a great showdown.
I'm looking forward to the fight.
So actually, if people are still watching, which after that whole like weird thing that happened a few minutes ago, you
We
might
can
have.
start a
tuned
GoFundMe
off.
to send us to Las Vegas for
Right.
the fight. We should
You-
do that.
Do you want to explain the whole like sound effect thing to people? 'Cause
That's just a reggaeton air horn.
I know, but why do you do it?
It's
Like, for
just,
me-
it's a sign of enthusiasm and the celebration, convivial settings. Why not?
Right. It could make some people uncomfortable if you just like did that, like sitting next to them.
I'm sorry.
Do you feel uncomfortable by the reggaeton?
No,
horn?
because I know him, but
This is becoming a session,
Yeah.
a therapy session.
Let's
I
end
feel like
this
some
show.
Reggaeton
people.
horn
No,
make
some
you feel
people. Some
uncomfortable.
people watch my Snapchat when I see you pop up, and they're like, "Oh, what did that guy just do that for?" And I'm like, "I know, it made you uncomfortable, didn't it?" So they're like, "Yeah."
You know what?
This was a great show, pound for pound.
Pound for
I
pound.
apologize if I made you uncomfortable.
All right. And that'll
Let's
do
end
it.
this. Yeah,
Cut.
this is we need to end this.